Hello, I'm Double Moses, and today we're talking raid farms. This is based on the same rapid raid cycling mechanic that I used in the previous farm, but this one's been updated to work with the slightly changed mechanics in 14.3 and hopefully in 14.4, as it's still currently working in 14.4 pre-release 6. The way it works, so instead of transforming a pillager outpost and just taking out one wave at a time, we just build a small platform in the middle of the ocean. We trick the game into spawning every single wave at once, and we use the patrol captains that spawn in as part of that raid to initiate the next raid. Using this technique, we're pulling in about 2,000 emeralds an hour. There will be a Lightmatic and a world download in the description. I haven't done much mining yet, so everything here is, let's say, functional rather than aesthetic, but I do plan on changing that soon. But first up, I wanted to sort out my trading hall situation. So I've got all the enchants that I need, but I'm finding trading for emeralds is starting to get real tedious. So I figure, instead of wasting time with discounts and all that, just dust off the old raid farm and let's just get so rich that we don't even need to care about the prices. There are two things you want to keep in mind when scouting out a location for this farm. The first is you want to find a nice empty stretch of ocean where there are no spawnable blocks within a 70 block radius. That is how we control where the raiders spawn and force them to spawn on our spawning platform. You don't need to worry about any of the caves under the ocean, as raiders can only spawn on the surface. The other thing you're going to need is a pillager outpost somewhere nearby. You don't need to do anything with it, but even though we use the patrol captains that spawn in the raid to keep the farm running, we are going to need to bring our own bad omen to get it started. I've got a pillager outpost around 3,000 blocks that way, which is just a quick trip through this portal. I was going to do something with this outpost using a villager to lure in the pillagers into a drop chute, but I couldn't be bothered. I got lazy, so now I just shoot dudes until a banner dude appears, which luckily there's one right there. There we go. Alright, now we've got Bad Omen. It's time to make it rain. Alright, now that we're back with Bad Omen, we're just about ready to go. What you're going to want to do now is put on your best armor and a stack of food in your offhand. You will occasionally be attacked by Vex, while most of them should be caught in the boats. Once in a while one will make it through and hit you, so just make sure you're protected. Then to start the raid, just hop down here. And if you want to do this AFK, pull this lever so that the Vex can't knock you out. Hold down your right mouse button so that you eat when you need to, and set your auto clicker to attack once every second. As you just saw, once we get it going, it's pretty much automatic. The redstone will handle all the timing for you. All you need to do is keep on swinging. Now for how this works. If you're not interested in the technical explanation, there's only a few more things you need to know before you start building. The first thing is that this farm is directional. So when you're in the chamber here, just make sure you're facing towards the north. And the other thing is the top of this platform is aligned with this horizontal blue line here. So make sure you build it at the right height, otherwise this pretty much won't work. I've got this block at y equals 191. The first thing that happens when we step into this chamber is we enter the village that is created by this workstation right here. So if we pull up F3 and G, we can see the chunk borders as well as the horizontal blue lines which make up these sub-chunk borders. Now this village area, which I've marked off with the yellow glass, that is a 3 by 3 by 3 cube of these sub-chunks, with the sub-chunk that the workstation is in at the center. That's why it's important to build this platform aligned with this horizontal blue line, because when we're here, that means we're standing just above the village, and then once we enter this chamber, our feet enter the village borders, which then starts the raid. It's just important to note, if you are flying in with Bad Omen, make sure you stay above the yellow area so you don't trigger the raid from the wrong point. Once we've started the raid, the next thing we need to do is move the raid center to a point that is more than 112 blocks away from that structure at the top. Since 14.3, the way the raid center is calculated is when the player triggers the raid, it searches in a 64 radius for all POIs, which are beds, bells, and workstations, and then it averages out their positions. So the workstation we use to trigger the raid is in the right X and Z position, but it's too close, so we need to move it down quite a bit. And the way we do that is we have these 9 POIs down here, which are just within 64 blocks of the player, and once their locations are added to the calculation, that moves the raid center down to this yellow glass block here. Just make sure you build the bed so that the bed head is facing towards the center, as that's the part of the bed that the game actually checks. Up here on the spawning platform, that raid center we just set is 118 blocks below this point here. So there are 3 locations that the game will attempt to spawn in a wave. The first 2 being a ring 64 blocks out from the raid center, with the second being 32 blocks out from the raid center. When it makes a spawning attempt, it will make it on the highest block in the location it picks, which in this situation is the surface of the ocean, which will cause those attempts to fail. That leaves the only valid spot as a 5 by 5 area, which includes the raid center, and extends out a further 4 blocks in the positive X and Z directions, which is right there. We leave the extra space around the edge so that the Ravagers don't glitch into the walls, and we light up the platform so that other mobs don't spawn and mess up the timers. Okay, now that we have everything positioned correctly, we're ready to start the raid. Once the raid bar fills up, it will spawn in the first wave. However, you will notice that the raid bar then goes dark. This happens due to the fact that raiders will only join the raid if they are within 112 blocks of the raid center. But because we've positioned everything in a way that spawns the raiders outside of that distance, the game thinks that there are no raiders for the player to fight, so then the game will then attempt to fill the raid by quickly spawning in the next wave over and over again until it runs out of waves. When a wave spawns, they will all appear on one block and explode outwards, which will push some of them into triggering this tripwire. That starts off a series of redstone timers that we use to control the progress of the raid. And this comparative fade out clock is the first delay that we use. That waits long enough for all the waves to spawn in, and once they're all appeared, we trigger this flying machine, which will push them all into the water stream. The Ravagers are just taller than 2 blocks, so they'll hit the lava and then start to get pushed up. We use these trapdoors here because the Ravagers are too wide to fit through this gap, so that stops them from getting pushed down and blocking the stream below. Any of the mobs riding the Ravagers, they'll get pushed up through this trapdoor and into the water, and as soon as they touch the water, they'll get dismounted and deposited with the rest of the mobs over here. Once all the waves have spawned in, the raid bar will then go into its victory phase, and that lasts around 30 seconds. Now, one of the changes in 14.3 was that any patrol leader that takes part in a raid cannot give you Bad Omen anymore. So we need to hold all of the mobs up here, which is still just outside of the raid range, until the raid bar disappears. That way, we can use the patrol captains that spawn in to start the next wave. The way we control that is with this hopper timer here, which gets activated at the same time as we send out the flying machine. Once these 32 items get sent into that hopper and then return, that will trigger this system, which does a few things. First up, it will open up the gates so that all the mobs can get pushed into the drop chamber. It will push up this glass block to send the flying machine back into its initial position. And it will also activate this part, which will retract those trapdoors, so any mobs standing on them will get dropped into the water stream. Once the raiders are in the drop chute, they'll go through this water block, which will slow their descent just enough that they land as a one-hit kill. The wooden trapdoors down the side of the chamber are there to limit the raiders' movement, so if we're AFKing and we're locked into the chamber, the Vex shouldn't be able to knock us into a position where we're unable to hit any of the raiders. And now, since the raid is over, killing any of the patrol captains will give us bad omen, which will start the next raid, and then repeat this whole process all over again. If you want to use the Lightmatic file to build it, I've made it pretty easy to get it at the right height. All you need to do is place a block so that its top is level with the surface of the ocean. Then just stand on that block when you create the placement. And that should put everything at the correct height. Just go up and double check here, so hit F3 and G. And just make sure that this platform is correctly aligned with the horizontal subchunk border like this. And if that's correct, then you're all good to go. Most of the build is pretty self-explanatory, but if you don't know how to get the water stream like this, it's pretty simple. Just grab yourself a temporary block and place them down like this. Then just place your water on top. Once it's flowed down there, just remove the temporary blocks. And that'll give you a stronger water stream at the end, which should be able to push the raiders out a bit more effectively. And now we're done. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments. I'll try to answer every single question that I can. I've put those emeralds to good use, filling a shulker box full of backup gear because I die a lot. And now with that done, the next thing on the agenda is fixing up this eyesore. Now what I've got planned is going to require a lot of terracotta, so I think in the next episode, we're going to be making a clay farm. So I hope this video helps you out. Thank you very much for watching. See you later.